What are the positives and negatives? Do you regret your decision? Story 1. Not a crazy disability, but I dated a girl with a glass eye. She had an infection of some sort as a child and had to have one eye removed. She had some minor difficulties but managed to learn how to drive and all that just fine. She had the best sense of humor about it, though. Back in the early 2000s, before emojis, we just sent smiley faces like smiley face and winky face and so on. However, she always just used one dot like. And story 2. I was with a girl who is deaf. You can burp and fart as much as you want as long as you're downwind. You never get woken up because of your snoring bothering them. You can make as much noise as you want in the morning or at night, but even the slightest bit of light can wake them up. Music can make them feel left out. There was no difference in sex other than slightly more eye contact. You can use a light or little laser pen to get their attention if they're far away and not facing you. You need to take time to explain or translate what's happening in conversation and train yourself to be patient. Sharing YouTube and other social media content can make them feel left out as many do not have subtitles. Movies require those special glasses or boxes that have subtitles. Generally weren't as enjoyable for her. People talking in movies are extra obnoxious because they are just as loud as the movie through hearing aids. She'll have no clue if she sits on the remote and causes the volume to skyrocket. People will get mad because they think they're being ignored, you have to explain, and then they get extremely apologetic. People in groups will constantly be worried she is being left out. Some party games they can't participate in. Watching cooking shows is particularly enjoyable for some reason. You need to call the fire and police department to let them know a deaf person lives there just to be safe. Pets can help them know when someone is at the door or other things like that. You have to face them when talking and can't turn away or they can't hear you. It can be a sort of get-out-of-jail-free card when you don't want to be somewhere, etc., as people never question why a deaf person would want to not be part of a situation. You can mostly communicate in a secret language in front of other people. Will update if I think of anything else. Story 3. Married my wife 18 years ago. She became disabled 8 years in with a type of cancer that destroyed her spine. She can be up on her feet for about 5 minutes maximum before her legs turn to jelly. She's had to learn to walk twice through surgery and recollapse of her vertebrae. We have 3 kids, all born before the cancer. And they all had to grow up a little faster than I'd like. Asking your 8-year-old son to help mom with the commode was heartbreaking. We've basically become home buddies. We bought a flat house so she can get around easier, and we host a lot of family events so we don't have to ask friends and family if toilets are on the main floor, how many steps to get inside, etc. I became the butler, maid, chef, and parental enforcer while working full-time. She helps keep the bills on track and helps the kids with school, and I follow up after cleaning up after dinner. We do a lot of movies, board games, and play video games together. We all have Minecraft accounts. I tend to be the gopher and do a lot of snapping pictures at the grocery store and texting her to confirm it's what she wants. When we do go out for meals, we tend to go early to beat the rush so she doesn't feel so crammed in somewhere with her wheelchair. We have a power chair for her, but getting a van that fits all 5 of us isn't cheap, so we tend to use it for walks around the neighborhood when we walk the dog. We're polite and introduce ourselves to neighbors who block the sidewalk with their cars, and once people understand we cruise the neighborhood in her chair, most leave the sidewalk clear for us. We haven't been intimate in a decade now, and on occasion, we have our moments and break down in front of each other. I lost my dad in September, and she wasn't able to be at my side for any of it until we held the memorial. Her dad is in failing health, and since she's high risk, she's committed to staying safe for her kids rather than risking a cross-country trip to see her dad one last time. Thank the gods for video calls. Takes us longer to get to places. I take a lot of outdoor videos when she can't handle the heat. Nerve damage destroyed her body's ability to regulate its temperature. She doesn't sweat, nor does she feel it when her legs are freezing. A lot is the same. We have late-night talks after the kids go to bed. I get lectured if I attempt to leave the house without giving her a goodbye kiss, etc. Some things are easier. She loves getting cards, hates getting flowers, but loves buying in-game mounts or outfits. So gift giving is pretty easy. We're introvert nerds, and our kids are the same. We all enjoy the simple things like sharing a laugh at the dinner table. even if it's just beanie weenies and cornbread because I had a long day. I'm in it to win it till she dies. The indolent cancer will eventually metastasize, and likely attempts at getting it out will cause her to bleed out and die. We just enjoy each day. Give hugs to all the kids at least once a day. Our 16-year-old son still hugs us willingly, even in public. We enjoy what time we have together. Story 4. Dated a blind woman for about 6 months. It was different in some ways, most of them mundane, like we didn't go to the movies and I drove all the time, but it honestly wasn't any different in any way that matters. Story 5. My dad dated and then married a woman who could not walk due to polio. From my perspective, they had a very long, very happy relationship that ended too soon when she died from complications due to polio. She told her friend that she liked him. They worked on different floors of the same building, but he would always make an excuse to go down to see her. They both worked for the American government, but in different departments. When they got married, her whole family thought he was after her money. I thought that was a slap in the face. I think they both knew that he was always going to have to take care of her as she got older. He never complained, though. Dad frequently carried her upstairs, propped her up on his motorcycle, helped her in the bathroom, just all the little stuff that she had difficulty with. Occasionally she would fall, but he was always there to pick her up. Seeing my non-handicapped mom married to an abusive psycho and then seeing my dad and stepmom together put things in perspective for me. Their relationship was completely normal. It is something that I would wish for myself. I don't think there was any difference between their relationship and any other couple that is in love and dedicated to one another. At her funeral, everyone made sure to say that they never saw her as handicapped. But I don't think my dad did. He was just in love with her, and she with him, and they just made it work. Story 6. I have a family member who is in a long-term relationship with a blind man. They seem to have a pretty great relationship. She has fun with him sometimes, like moving things around the house or leaving the room when he is talking to her, so he is just talking to himself. This is all good-natured fun that they both laugh about. He is also really self-sufficient. He does all the maintenance on her car, changes her oil, brake fluid, and rotates the tires. He also cleans the house, and according to her, you will never see a cleaner window when he is done. They also once got him behind the wheel of a car in an empty parking lot to see how well he could drive with her directing him. Answer: not well. Story 7. I am a bit beyond the scope of your question. I have been married to my wife, who is deaf, for 12 years. I met her in college and found her voice endearing. We were living in the same dorm and had the same major. I didn't want to major in that anymore, and when I met her, I had an epiphany of what I wanted to do with my life. I changed majors and schools, and now I work as an interpreter for the deaf. There is a serious communication barrier to overcome. I did a lot of work by getting a degree in precisely that kind of communication, and there needs to be an acknowledgement of the kind of disparity and inequity that exists between us. The rest is making the effort to communicate clearly and consistently every day. That's no different than any other couple, I think. Having said that, there are pros and cons. I can't shout to her from another room to come to me or ask a question. I do a fair amount of waving my arms and tapping her on the arm to get her attention. Movies are hard since captioning is hard to access in the theaters. I can, however, mutter things that might cause an argument but express my feelings nonetheless, which she won't hear. We can watch 2 different television shows in the same room, hers muted and using closed captions. We can have private conversations in American Sign Language at family gatherings, and we can communicate across long distances and in loud environments easily. Story 8. I work at a pumpkin farm in the fall. More specifically, I work at the pedal carts. They are small tractor-looking bikes that you have to pedal. One day, right before closing time, a man and his girlfriend in a wheelchair came up to my friend and me and asked if he could use a tractor and she could race in her chair on the track. It was the cutest thing ever, and they didn't let her disability stop her from having fun at the pumpkin farm. Story 9. Not me, but a family member and his wife. His wife is deaf, so when they got married and moved in together, he told me that in the first few days he would try to be as quiet as possible so as not to wake her up. Then he thought, what am I doing? She's deaf. After that, he didn't make much effort to be quiet. Story 10. Men with spina bifida here. I have never dated a disabled person myself, but I'm one, so I guess I can contribute a little to the conversation. Being disabled is not the same for every disability. Each one has its own differences in how it affects your normal life day to day. Dating someone with a disability means having to deal with those differences with the person. Want to go on a trip with a girl in a wheelchair? It's not simply packing some clothes and you're good to go. You will have to plan all the logistics of the wheelchair with her. Does the place you're going have slopes and elevators? Is the bathroom adapted for a wheelchair? Those kinds of questions. That's something you should be aware of. Entering someone's life means dealing with their problems, and this is not just for disabled people. On the other hand, unless you are dealing with an amputee, in that case there is no other hand. People with disabilities are used to being alone and not even being considered for a partner. It's hard to find someone who can see you as a person before the disability, and I tend to treat a girl I'm interested in the best I can. I'm sure this is true for a lot of people with disabilities as well. If you are treating her the right way, she will put effort into keeping you in her life. Just don't think you are doing charity or something. That is not treating her right. There is an entire kink directed toward disabled people called devotees. But that's not the point of the conversation. I just wanted to mention it in case someone reading this has feelings toward disabled people they can't explain. Sorry for the grammar. English is not my mother language, and I always feel insecure writing long texts. Feel free to ask me anything. I will answer the best way I can. Story 11. My wife is partially deaf, and I have to raise my voice over time because she refuses to wear the hearing aid. People often think I'm mad yelling at her, but it's because otherwise, she wouldn't hear me. Story 12. My wife has schizophrenia. She hears very negative voices from outside. They make her afraid to do anything. She can't even drive. She has been different in this way her whole life, and the world has been cruel to her for it, to the point where strangers give her anxiety. We became friends online on a video game. For years we hung out every day. She lived 4,000 miles away. But one day she did the bravest thing she's ever done in her life. She went to another country to meet me all by herself. I showed her everything about me, the good, the bad, the shameful, and she loved me for it. She is a truly good person, the only one I ever met. And yes, there are frustrations. Communication is difficult for her when she is upset. She sometimes can't speak at all. She is very forgetful and constantly loses things. She's clueless when it comes to doing something dishonest, like hiding a bag of candy from the roommate. And I would not change her for the world. And I know she wouldn't change me. We've had ups and downs, but I've never for a second felt she was a burden or resented her for something that was out of her control. I couldn't live without her. Story 13. I dated a little person for a few months. I do not know if that counts, as she was not disabled in any way other than being very small. She was 4 feet 4 inches tall. We met at a bar on my 24th birthday. I lived down the road from the bar, and she must have quite enjoyed my company because she stayed the night at my place. We kept dating after that. The most interesting thing was her house. She still lived with her parents, who were also little people, and the amenities in the house were built to their size. The counters were at thigh level for me, which was novel because I am a pretty short dude myself, only 5 feet 7 inches tall. The cabinets were also much lower, and I had to bend down to reach most things. I think that was the only time I ever experienced what it would be like to be tall. Her head only reached my chest, which is something I have never experienced before or since. All in all, 10 out of 10, would recommend dating a little person if you are a short guy. Story 14. When I was in college, I took American Sign Language because it was required at the university I attended. One of the requirements in the course was going to an area where deaf people hang out. I found a deaf church and attended the service, which was all in sign language. After the service, I saw this woman who was attractive. At the time, my sign language abilities were awful. I approached her and had no idea how to sign, so I started writing on a piece of paper, and she proceeded to write back. We exchanged phone numbers and ended up going out on a date that night. We hooked up at the end of the night. Long story short, we dated for 2 years and broke up eventually. I became really good at sign language, which I still use today. Overall, it was a fun experience, And I learned a lot about the deaf culture.